when I got pregnant. In 10th grade, my parents kicked me out of the house. 20 years later, they showed up demanding to meet their grandson, but what they saw shocked them. My father set a blank check on my coffee table like he was closing a real estate deal. $250,000. He slid it toward me with 2 fingers, the same deliberate, measured motion I remembered from boardroom stories he used to tell at dinner when I was a child, back when I was still allowed at his dinner table. He was 63 now, gray at the temples, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. My mother sat beside him in a Chanel blazer, spine straight as a church pew, hands folded in her lap. They'd arrived in a black Mercedes S-Class at 10:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know the time because my Ring doorbell logged it, and I have learned over the course of 20 years to document everything. 3 hours, my father said. Bring him to the anniversary party Saturday. Some photos with the family. Then you go back to your life. The him in that sentence was the grandson they had been bragging about for 4 months to every person they knew in Portland. Their church congregation, the Rotary Club, the mayor's wife at a charity gala. A grandson they had invented entirely from a single line in a Pacific Northwest business magazine profile that read, Myers, who runs her design firm with characteristic precision, is also raising a college-age child as a single mother. They had read child and decided grandson. They had built a mythology around him, told people he was studying pre-law, that he had his grandfather's jaw. They hadn't invented him from love. They'd invented him because they needed him. And if I say no, I asked. My father's jaw tightened in the way it had tightened 20 years ago, right before he told me to get out of his house. We'll contact your child ourselves, he said. Explain the family history. There it was. Silk over a blade. I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me. Unhurried, confident. The footsteps of someone who had no idea what she was walking into. My daughter Lily appeared in the doorway. 19 years old. University of Washington sweatshirt. A copy of Fundamentals of Structural Engineering tucked under her arm. She had my dark hair and her father's height, and the specific expression of a young woman who has absorbed by proximity and by nature 20 years of watching her mother refuse to be rattled. My mother stood up from the couch, looked at Lily, looked at me. Something moved across her face. Calculation, then confusion, then the early stages of understanding. Who is this? She said. This is Lily, I said. Your granddaughter. The word landed in the room like a stone into still water. My mother sat back down. I need to take you back 20 years, because the thing about this story is that it doesn't make sense without the beginning. And the beginning was November 14th, 2004. A Tuesday. Cold and raining in the particular way it rains in Portland in November. Not dramatic, just relentless. The kind of rain that soaks through things. I was 16 years old, and I'd been sitting on The Secret for 6 weeks. My name is Grace Myers. In 2004, I was a sophomore at Lincoln High School. Honor roll, varsity debate team, the kind of kid my parents bragged about at dinner parties. My father, Richard Myers, was a partner at Myers & Callaway, a mid-sized Portland law firm that had been in the family name for 30 years. My mother, Diane Myers, ran the household and the family's public image with the same iron efficiency, and considered both to be essentially the same job. We were a particular kind of family, the kind where appearances were not merely important, but load-bearing, where what the church congregation thought and what the Rotary Club said and what the neighbors saw from the driveway were structural features of the life we all lived inside. I had understood this from approximately age 7, which is why I waited 6 weeks to tell them. I knew in some wordless animal way what was coming. I just didn't know how bad it would be. I told them on a Tuesday night after dinner. My brother Nathan, 13 at the time, was upstairs doing homework. My parents were in the living room, my father reading, my mother reviewing something on her laptop. I stood in the doorway and I said the words. My mother closed her laptop. My father set down his book. And then, with no intermediate steps, no questions, no where did we go wrong, no conversation of any kind, my mother stood up, walked to the front door, and opened it. You're dead to us, she said. That was it. 7 words. No raised voice, no tears. The way you'd say, take out the trash or turn off the lights. I was 16 years old. It was 9 p.m. It was raining. I stood there for a moment, waiting for something. A revision, an asterisk. But wait, there was nothing. My mother held the door and looked at the middle distance, and my father had picked up his book again. I walked out. The door closed behind me. I stood on the porch in the rain with no coat, no phone charger, $23 in my pocket, and nowhere to go. I want to tell you about the woman who saved my life, because she deserves to be in this story before anyone else. Rosa Torres lived 3 houses down. She was 54, recently widowed, a retired school librarian who kept a security camera on her front porch because her son worried about packages being stolen. She had watched me grow up from her garden, and she had always had the particular quality of someone who notices things without making a performance of noticing them. I was standing on her porch at 9:17 p.m. when she opened the door. I hadn't even knocked yet. She'd seen me on her camera, soaked through, standing in the rain, and she came to the door herself. She didn't ask a lot of questions. She gave me dry clothes and a bowl of soup and her son's old bedroom, and a hug that I'm not sure I could have survived the night without. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived at her address. My father had apparently assumed I was there, and he was right. Certified mail. Signature required. The kind of mail that means what's inside is meant to be witnessed, recorded, undeniable. I signed for it. Inside were 3 pages on Myers & Callaway letterhead, notarized. My father's signature at the bottom. The document stated that I, Grace Elizabeth Myers, Myers did voluntarily relinquish all familial rights, claims of inheritance, and legal standing within the Myers family, effective immediately, and that this relinquishment extended to any dependents, born or unborn, now or in the future. My father was a lawyer. He had drawn up the papers the same night he threw me out. He'd had his paralegal notarize them. He had mailed them certified mail so that I would have to sign for my own erasure. I held those 3 pages in Mrs. Torres's kitchen, and I made myself read every word. Then I folded them and put them in the inside pocket of the jacket she'd lent me. I kept them for 20 years. Mrs. Torres let me stay for 8 months until I turned 17 and could legally sign my own lease. She fed me. She drove me to every prenatal appointment. She sat with me in the waiting room of the Multnomah County Social Services office, while a caseworker named Patricia Okafor, 22 years with the county, a woman who had seen everything and let none of it make her unkind, helped me navigate WIC emergency housing assistance and the specific bureaucratic maze of being a minor mother with no family support. You're going to need documentation of everything, Patricia told me on our second meeting. She slid a manila folder across her desk. Every appointment, every form, every letter. Keep copies of everything you sign. Keep a record of what people tell you verbally, too, and write it down the same day. I was 17. I wrote it down. That habit started in Patricia Okafor's county office, in a plastic chair across from a woman who actually gave a damn, became the architecture of everything that came after. Lily was born April 3, 2005, at Oregon Health and Science University at 6:48 a.m. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, dark hair, dark eyes, and an expression of deep skepticism that she has maintained more or less ever since. Mrs. Torres was in the room. She held my hand. No one else came. I'm going to move quickly through the next 15 years. Not because they weren't hard. They were in the particular grinding way that being a single teenage mother with no family safety net and a college dream is hard, but because what I want you to understand is the shape of what I built, not just the effort it took. I got my GED at 17, community college at 18, full financial aid, nights and weekends while Mrs. Torres watched Lily, University of Oregon at 20, transfer scholarship, industrial design. I graduated at 23, Lily was 7, carried a sign at the ceremony that said, "My mom did it," that I still have in a frame, and went directly into a junior designer position at a firm in Portland called Arcturus Studio. I was good at the work. I'd always been good at the work. What I discovered in my 20s was that being good at work, when you have no family money and no safety net and nowhere to fall, produces a particular kind of focus that people who've always had a soft landing underneath them sometimes have trouble matching. By 30, I was senior designer. By 33, I had a roster of clients and a vision for a firm of my own. Lily & Cobra Design opened in January 2015, named for the person who'd been the reason for all of it. 5 employees, a rented studio in the Pearl District, and a client list I'd built from 6 years of showing up and being excellent. By the time the Pacific Northwest Business Magazine ran their profile in March 2024, we had 23 employees, a revenue of $4.2 million, and a second office in Seattle. The line in the article that would alter the next 6 months of my life read, "Myers, who runs her firm with characteristic precision, is also raising a college-age child as a single mother." I'd told the journalist the pronoun. She'd used it. It was right there in the piece, in the second paragraph, available to anyone who'd bothered to read it. My parents had not bothered to read it. My brother Nathan called me in February, 2 months before my parents showed up at my door. I want to be careful about Nathan, because he's a complicated figure in this story. He was 13 when I left, too young to have made adult choices, and the adult he grew into was shaped by being raised in the version of the family story where I had simply ceased to exist. He reached out to me when he was 25, found me through LinkedIn, sent a message that said, "I don't know what happened and I don't expect you to want to talk to me, but I wanted you to know I think about you." We'd built something careful and real over the years since then. He lived in Seattle, worked in marketing, knew about Lily, sent her birthday cards. He was the only member of my biological family who knew anything true about my life. He called in February because he was worried. "Mom and Dad have been telling people at church about a grandson," he said, "for months. They read that magazine thing and just decided. I've heard them describe him 3 times now. Pre-law, his grandfather's jaw. Wants to join the firm someday." A pause. "Grace, they're planning the 50th anniversary party around it. Pastor Harrison wants to do a whole thing about family legacy and 4 generations of Myers. It's going to be live streamed to the congregation." I put the phone down for a moment. Lily was in the kitchen making coffee, home for spring break, in a UW sweatshirt that was approximately 1 size too large. "What did they do when they found out I was a girl?" Lily called through the doorway. She'd been listening. "They don't know yet," I said. She turned around, leaned in the doorway. Quick pause. "If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description." Looked at me with those dark eyes that had been skeptical since April 3, 2005. "When are you going to tell them?" she asked. "I'm not," I said. "I'm going to show them." The Tuesday they arrived with the blank check. I had already spent 3 weeks preparing. I had retrieved the original disinheritance document from the fireproof box in my closet, a gray Sentry safe, the kind with a key lock that I'd bought specifically to hold things I never wanted to lose. The document was still in my father's envelope, still in the inside pocket of the jacket Mrs. Torres had lent me 20 years ago, which I had kept because I am, as it turns out, a person who keeps things. I photographed all 3 pages on my kitchen table. High resolution. Every line visible, including the notary stamp and my father's signature and the date, November 17th, 2004, 3 days after he'd opened his front door and let the rain do the rest. Then I called Mrs. Torres. She answered on the second ring, the way she always did. Rosa, I said, do you still have your security camera footage from November 2004? A pause. Honey, she said, I never delete anything. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A still image, grainy in the way that 2004 security footage was grainy. Low resolution, slightly overexposed by the porch light. A teenager on a porch in the rain. Dark hair soaked flat. A blur of a face tilted slightly down. The timestamp in the bottom corner. 9:17 p.m., November 14th, 2004. The street address visible in the corner of the frame. Me, at 16, standing in the rain after my parents opened the door. I still have the full tape, Mrs. Torres said, and I'll go anywhere you need me to go. She was 74. She'd take a flight to Portland on a weekend to sit in a ballroom full of people who'd spent 20 years not asking where I went. I told her the party was Saturday. She said she'd book her ticket. I want to talk about the 2 days between Tuesday's visit and Saturday's party, because I've seen this story told in ways that make it seem impulsive. And it was not impulsive. It was methodical. It was the product of 20 years of being taught by Patricia Okafor, and by necessity to document, organize, and be prepared. I called an attorney on Wednesday morning. Not a family attorney. I called Margaret Solis, a Portland-based media and defamation lawyer with 31 years of practice, whose name I knew because she'd done some contract work adjacent to a business deal of mine 2 years prior. I wanted a professional opinion on what I was about to do. I described the situation, the disinheritance document, the check, the threat to contact Lily, the live-streamed anniversary party where my parents were planning to present a fictional grandson to their congregation. Margaret was quiet for a moment. The document is interesting, she said. It was drawn up without independent legal counsel for you, while you were a minor, under duress. A family law attorney would have a field day. Separately, if they've been publicly making statements about a grandson who doesn't exist, you may have grounds for something regarding false representation, though that's a longer conversation. She paused. What are you planning to do Saturday? I'm going to tell the truth in the room where they've been telling the lie, I said. Do you have documentation? 3 pages of it, notarized. And a witness? Eyewitness. She'll be in the room. Then I'd say you're not doing anything wrong, Margaret said. You're correcting a false public record with evidence, in a public setting. That's not defamation. That's just the truth. I had one more call to make. I called Nathan. The party's Saturday, I said. Don't warn them I'm coming. A long pause. Grace, he said. Are you sure? I've been sure about this for 20 years, I said. I just had to wait for the right room. Saturday. The Heathman Hotel, downtown Portland. I know the Heathman the way any Portlander of a certain background knows it. Charity galas, law firm dinners, the kind of room where crystal chandeliers and starched tablecloths do the social work of telling people that whatever's happening here is important. My parents had booked the main ballroom, 200 guests, a stage with a podium and a floral arrangement the size of a small car, white roses. The live stream camera was set up in the back left corner on a tripod. Pastor Harrison's idea, Nathan had told me, a celebration of 50 years of marriage and family values, streamed to the congregation of Emmanuel Lutheran Church. Probably 150 more people watching from home. I wore a black dress, structured, clean, the kind of thing I wore to client presentations when I needed the room to take me seriously before I'd said a word. Lily stood beside me in the lobby. She wore dark slacks and a white blouse and the expression of someone who has absorbed, from approximately age 8 onward, what it cost her mother to be exactly who she was. You don't have to come up, I told her. I know, she said. I want to. We walked in together. The room turned the way rooms do when someone unexpected enters a space where everyone knows everyone else. Heads swiveled. Conversations paused. I heard fragments. Isn't that Richard's daughter? I thought she was in Europe, because that, apparently, was the story. That I had moved to Europe. That the estrangement was mutual and geographic, and no one's fault in particular. My father was on stage at the podium, mid-speech, the reading glasses on now, voice carrying the warm cadence of a man who was very comfortable in front of an audience. 50 years has taught me that family is the foundation of everything we build. That no success in work or community. He saw me. His voice didn't stop cleanly. It just ran out, like a car rolling to a halt. I walked down the center of the room. The crowd parted. The live stream camera, operated by a volunteer I didn't know, tracked the movement in the room the way cameras do, toward whatever is most alive. I stepped onto the stage. I held out my hand for the microphone. My father stared at me. He had the expression of a man watching something happen that he had constructed his entire life to prevent. He didn't hand it over. I took it. Hello. My voice filled the ballroom. Clean, steady. My name is Grace Myers. I'm Richard and Diane Myers' youngest daughter. Most of you probably know me as the one who moved to Europe. 200 people. Not a sound. I didn't move to Europe. I was 16 years old and I was pregnant. And on November 14th, 2004, my parents opened the front door and told me I was dead to them. Then they had their attorney draw up a document, their family attorney, not mine, stating that I relinquished all family rights, along with, and I'm quoting directly, any dependents, born or unborn, now or in the future. I held the document up to the room, 3 pages, notarized. My father's signature at the bottom, large and legible and unmistakable. The signature of a man who'd signed his name on important papers all his life. That dependent they referred to, I said, is my daughter daughter, Lily. Lily stepped onto the stage beside me. Dark hair, dark eyes, 19 years old. She looked out at the room without flinching. 4 months ago, I continued, my parents read a magazine profile about my design firm and assumed my child was a grandson. They didn't ask. They didn't call. They invented a grandson. Pre-law, grandfather's jaw, joining the family firm. And they have been introducing him to all of you for months. I watched the room process this, watched the glances exchanged, watched a woman near the front put her hand over her mouth. Last Tuesday, they came to my home with a blank check for $250,000. They asked me to bring my grandson to this party for 3 hours, for photos, to make their story look real. I set the document down on the podium. When I didn't immediately agree, my father told me they would contact my child directly and explain the family history themselves. A voice from the back of the room. I can tell you something about the family history. Rosa Torres stood up from her chair at a table near the exit. 74 years old, silver hair, in the good blazer she wore to important things. She had booked a Southwest flight to Portland the day I called her. My name is Rosa Torres. I was the Myers neighbor on Elmwood Drive for 31 years. On November 14th, 2004, I watched a 16-year-old girl stand in the rain on my porch at 9:17 p.m. before she knocked on my door. She held up her phone, the still from the security footage, displayed large on the screen, timestamp visible, address visible. She had no coat, no bag, $23. I took her in. I took her to every prenatal appointment. I was in the room when her daughter was born. She set the phone down. In 8 months of living 3 houses from the Myers family, not one member of that family, not one, called my house to ask where Grace had gone. The ballroom was absolutely silent. My father moved toward me. His hand reached for the microphone. I stepped back, held it out of reach. I'm not finished, I said. He stopped. I didn't come here for the money. I didn't come here for an apology, though I spent a long time wanting one. I looked out at the room, at 200 people who had shared church pews and dinner tables with my parents for decades, who had heard my name used as a cautionary tale, or not used at all. I came because they built a lie in this room, in front of all of you, and I'm the only person who can correct it with evidence, not because I want to hurt them, but because I'm done being erased. Pastor Harrison, I recognized him from the church website Nathan had shown me. A tall man with white hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to moral authority, stepped forward from the front row. He looked at my father. Richard, he said. His voice was careful and quiet. Is what your daughter is saying true? 200 people waited. The live stream comment count, which I could see on the volunteers' monitor from the stage, had climbed past 400. My father opened his mouth. He was a lawyer who had been opening his mouth in rooms like this for 35 years and always knowing what to say. He closed it. My mother had not moved from her seat at the family table at the front of the room. She was looking at Lily, at the shape of her, the height of her, the 19 years of a granddaughter she had signed away before she existed. Lily looked back at her. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. I should tell you what happened after because I know that's what you're waiting for. My father didn't speak again that night. He and my mother left the Heathman through a side exit approximately 4 minutes after Pastor Harrison's question went unanswered. I watched them go. No confrontation, no scene, just 2 people who had always managed their exit carefully, leaving more quietly than they'd arrived. The party, somewhat remarkably, continued. People stayed. Some came to speak to me. A few of my parents' friends, awkward and sincere, women who'd known me as a child and said things like I didn't know in a way I believed. Nathan found me near the dessert table and hugged me for a long time without saying anything. Mrs. Torres ate 2 pieces of the anniversary cake and declared it excellent. The live stream recording was still up for 3 days before someone in the congregation asked the church to take it down. By then, it had been clipped and reposted in several places. I'm not going to tell you exactly what happened with that, because honestly, the internet part of it is the part of the story I have the least control over and the least interest in. What I can tell you is that Myers and Calloway received a notable volume of public attention in the weeks that followed, and that my father retired from the firm the following spring, though I have no way to draw a direct line between those 2 facts. My mother called me once, 6 weeks later. I let it go to voicemail. I don't expect you to forgive us, the message said. I'm not sure I'd know how to accept it if you tried. I just wanted you to know. The picture of Lily, the one from the stage. I've been looking at it since Saturday. A long pause. She has your eyes. I didn't call back. I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because there are things that an apology, even a real one, cannot reach backward far enough to fix. And because I have spent 20 years becoming someone who does not perform reconciliation, she doesn't feel in order to make other people comfortable. 3 months later, Lily's 20th birthday. We had dinner at a restaurant in the Pearl District. Her choice, a Thai place she'd loved since high school. Nothing fancy. Mrs. Torres flew up from Portland. Nathan came. 2 of Lily's university friends. 7 people around a table in a room that smelled like lemongrass and had too loud music, and was exactly right. At some point in the middle of dinner, Lily held up her glass and said simply, "To not being erased." We drank to that. On the drive home, Lily was quiet for a while in the passenger seat. Then she said, "Do you think they'll try again? Grandma and Grandpa?" I thought about it honestly. "I don't know," I said. "Would you let them?" she asked. I drove for a moment. "That's not my decision to make alone," I said. "You're the one they signed away. You're the dependent the document referred to. Whatever happens with them is at least as much your call as mine." Lily looked out the window. The city went past. "I don't hate them," she said. "I just don't know them. There's a difference." "There is."